Hey guys, hi there. Yeah, I want to do all sorts of things, so I will just see how this goes. As I tend to tell you a couple of times a week, I do have a couple more sips of coffee, but I also have, as tends to happen, a couple of different subjects that are sort of intertwined and on top of each other in this on this side of things. So I will just start off somewhere, okay? The first thing that I should be talking about is maybe just a little wrap up for the assemblage point business. Um, yeah, I suppose it can be really academic or theoretical if that's not something you really ever encountered before. Makes a lot of sense. Um, I've had a kind of a fondness for Castaneda as an author for a couple of years, where I just tend to pick up one of his books at some point during the autumn. It's something that happens. And hang on, coffee. Because it's still warm and it's good and it has a bit of spices in it. So, good things, coffee and cinnamon and cardamom and all those go together really well. So I don't know. I just kind of always. The funny thing is, at some point, I've always had a bit of a fascination with all the trippy business. I don't really do psychedelic mushrooms myself, as other than in this type of a form that you've seen me use before, where it's more of a vibrational interaction with the Shakti energy work, which is going to be part of this story today also. I hope and I want, because there's that. Things do tend for me to get quite a bit more. Perception changes anyway. Okay, so, but for me, it's more because of the Shakti work that I've been doing, the Kundalini work that I've been doing. It tends to be more gradual, and that's good because I get a chance to get used to things, and sometimes it feels like I have this huge natural world that's really close to me that I can kind of access any way or any time that I want. And I suppose that one of the ways that I really access it and or work with it basically is when I work with essential oils. That's what so aromatherapy kind of a thing. There's much more there that I can sort of easily access, especially nowadays. It's become like this, I don't know, friendship. Yes, with that's what it feels like to me. Friendship with all sorts of ingredients and oils, and the same applies to the whole Amanita and Boletus business. So, and there's trees and there's animals even. So, the natural world as being as something I can really engage with, and I suppose another way that it applies, and also there the Shakti work has done a lot to stabilize me, make me stronger so that I can do more things, is in massage and what you're supposed to call that, I think some kind of an energy meridian work that I have, occasionally done for my husband, that I tend to do when he gets, overworked or any of it. I've been able to stabilize him physically and vibrationally for many years now. If he comes home and he's like all over the place and really tired because he's all in his head and his mind is overworked and overwrought basically, and especially when there's too much information in the intellectual frame added onto some type of an emotional tug of war, which tends to happen. People do that. People tend to, pull at each other. Then he gets frustrated and he gets out there. He kind of flips out of his peaceful self, and he becomes confused and annoyed and things like that. And He doesn't really know how to get back in touch with himself better nowadays, but he didn't used to. He used to not be able to get back in touch with himself in any way. So then I used to, I remember one time, it's a couple of years ago now, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago or so, that we were just walking around the village here in the close neighborhood, in some place, and he was really, like frustrated and annoyed and feeling, like he didn't have any control over things and all that. And what I did, I basically just held my hand like this in a flat in front of his stomach, like that, and we stood there just around the corner of one of the shops with my hand in front of his belly for half an hour, at least 40 minutes. And what that does, it just kind of brings down all this excitement, basically. So all those types of things, there's all sorts of manipulations in a positive manner, energy type work, things that you can do that all become much more self-evident, I suppose, if there's Shakti energy that you're aware of, that you can use and direct, and more or less. So all that's really very much part of my life nowadays. I don't have to help my husband as much as I used to because of his, he's had like a stomach operation, and all that's helped a lot for him to also, be able to do a lot of things himself. So that's, of course, a lot easier. Changed a lot. That did. Oh, yes. Why am I going into this? This whole, what I'm trying to say here also is that this whole, so what I tend to read when I read or listen to trip reports or things like that is I tend to see it more as somebody has used a mushroom or some other type of herb or peyote or ayahuasca or whatever it is. And what they've done basically is they have kind of forced themselves to flip their awareness over from the normal state of affairs, whatever that is for them, over to a much more holistic, if you like, you can describe it any way you want it, frame of mind, which is much more open. All of a sudden, all sorts of energy patterns, energy work has become activated within them. Only quite often they don't know what to do with all the energies, with all the vibrations, with all the changes and all the differences. And so that's why I'm such a fan of the Shakti approach, because then you can do it yourself. You can slowly and surely experience different phases of what happens if the Shakti is in your second chakra and your third chakra, and around those areas you can see whether there's areas that really need a lot more attention for whatever reason. That's how I went about it anyway. So I have had, so far I can only say that my approach has worked really well for me. I feel immensely stronger. I also, so coming back to this assemblage point business, I still don't know what it is. To tell you the truth, I still don't know what it is. And yesterday was the next day after this adventure, episode that I talked to you about before, just where, skipping the little video that I uploaded this morning of the graveyard. That was just a touristy bit right there. Also to, just show you what I was on about and what I was doing at the moment. Yesterday I felt, okay, so I had to go to the dentist, which is something that people do, I hate going to the dentist. It's terrible. And it used to be a lot worse back in the day. So having to deal with anxiety is one of the prime motivations that I've had, to get engaged in all this, because without, that's my thing. That's why I am here. That's why I'm doing the things, is because if I don't, or if I hadn't, I would still have been this miserable little pile of dirty laundry that I was. And so I am yay motivated. I am so incredibly motivated. And each time I'm so tired and I just don't want to do it anymore. And I'm fed up with everything. And I don't want to do the life, with all the complications and all the people and all the confusion and all the things that I'm expecting of myself, because there's this person over here that you don't see that just keeps egging me on and keeps pushing me and prodding me, and I have no choice. I really don't. I mean, I can either learn to swim properly, or I can drown. And so I don't want to drown. There you go. That's it. And so wherever that takes me, that's what you're going to get some of as well. Okay. And so the assemblage point, yes, that's where I was at. Because I'm sort of putting the trippy business in the Castaneda stories, I'm putting all that to the side. Because it's the trippiness and the trippy stories in my frame of mind, they're only a consequence of your suddenly taking away the intellectual barriers and the intellectual control that you tend to have in our kind of life. So normally you have a load of control, you have all this need or desire or whatever it is, and it's been there for 40 or 50 or however many years, and you tend to organize your consciousness accordingly, always. And that's what we're used to. I do the same thing. I still do the same thing. It's like, I want to have a cup of coffee, so ergo I have to do blah, blah, and blah before I can do that. And then I want to have my coffee and I need some more fresh air, so I should blah and blah, 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 and so on. And my whole life is structured and organized according to whatever comes first at that point. Or, okay, later today I'll have to go to the local history society again, means taking the computer, taking blah, taking this, that, the other. It's very rational. Most of it is really very rational, very simple, and quite comfortable, which is why we want it to stay that way. We want to be in control, thank you very much. It's because I'm such a huge fan of being in control, because it's nice to be quiet and have a bit of music or a book or whatever, and just be generally, be allowed to have some quiet time, to rest also, because, so I'm trying to do two things at the same time here. I don't know if you've noticed. I'm trying to talk about the assemblage point to finish that up. I'm also trying to talk about what yesterday was like, because there's that. So let me do one thing first. So I have no idea about the assemblage point, exactly what that is. My conclusion in the Tuesday's video was that the assemblage point in Castaneda's interpretation and in the whale medical interpretation, which is the website that I gave to you then, they're completely different, really. And so that's basically the conclusion that I came to at this point, is that that's what it's like. They're two different things, and I have no idea what the Castaneda assemblage point is supposed to really do, because in the other approach that I've used and applied to myself, it is really unhealthy for the assemblage point to be anywhere else than in here, in the middle, where it's supposed to be. So shifting that doesn't feel good anymore at all. It still hurts a bit over here from, having moved it over here. So I suppose that'll all pass. At the moment, I'm still, a bit tired and whatnot, and I haven't had enough air and all that. So at some point soon, I will probably feel a bit more aware and awake of the things. And I found also that drinking coffee only wakes up my head. It doesn't really make me more aware of how things are vibrationally or otherwise. So I did the work Tuesday, and I can sort of still feel that it's quite active in here in the middle. And I felt that also going to the dentist yesterday morning was not easier, but I felt a lot stronger than before. I felt I was much more able than back in the days, so 10, 20 years ago, to trust in what they do to you, you know. It's their job. They know what they're up against. They know what they're doing. They've got gorgeous tools, you know, and all I had to do is just lie there. And of course, I asked for anesthetic, you know, local anesthetic for them to sort the thing out in there, and then just to, you know, lie there and let them do it. And that's basically what I did. So it took half an hour and then it was done. And I was really relieved. And I spent the rest of the day going around the clients with husband, basically because I didn't want to be home alone anymore, because I was so tired from the night before, not having slept all that well with you know, being all over the place. And so, yeah, so I am stronger, but I don't stress any less, really. It's not like I'm not scared anymore. I'm just as scared as I was. But it doesn't blow me out of the house anymore. I used to feel so, you know, like I was annihilated. It was so bad. Oh, you guys. So then, halfway through the afternoon, having, you know, got all that and done my little vlog and done a bit of reading and I don't know what else I was doing. I even did a bit of card reading in the middle of somewhere. My dad called again. So, which is cool because I like us to have a bit of conversation going then on and off. And long story short, that's the other part that I want to talk about here. And that's going to be a bit more personal and a bit more, you know, it's intense. It's still very intense. It's also, some things are becoming much more familiar at the moment to me. And I am basically appalled and shocked at the extent to which I still see both my parents as figures of authority and figures of power. Somewhere in here, you know, there is the assumption that whatever that means, this guy is my dad. So that he's got some kind of an access to reality that is more powerful or stronger than mine. That I don't really agree with, because he's not been in my life. So he may have this access or whatever. Anybody can have this access. There's no need for me to it's complicated, okay? I find this to be quite complicated. And I'm learning a number of things. I'm learning one thing that I've noticed yesterday and that keeps coming back to me, that I feel like I should also really talk about here at this point, is that when you're interacting with people like that, this position thing, him being my dad, whatever that means, you know, I'm allergic to father figures anyway, so please, let's not do it, okay? It's not because I'm this person that I need to have a dad or a mom, for that matter, anymore. The thing I was going to, what I want to say here is there is what people say, what people are talking about, the hopefully, you know, conversation that you're actually having with this person, the verbal business, and the also even quite a bit of the non-verbal business that's going on. Text, okay? I'm calling that text. The things that you're supposed to engage with. Because that's what's being talked about. That's what's being said to you. So logically, that's what you should respond to. Okay? There's all that. And then there's a bit of nothing. And then there's the subtext. What I call the subtext at this point. And I'm learning quite a lot about that bit. And I've no idea to what extent he's aware of any of this. Probably he's aware of it somewhere, of course, yes. I mean, he's not stupid, so... And a lot of the subtext actually has to do with, in what to me feels like, basically pain. A lot of it is pain and helplessness and being stuck in a situation like I've described before a couple of times already. Those two, my parents, were stuck in a life with each other for some reason. I suppose there was also a big taboo on getting divorced in those days before they actually did it, you know. They did it in the early 70s. They severed the knot, so to speak, in the early 70s. And that's when it was starting to become a bit more acceptable, and or there were a lot more people divorcing in those days than in the 60s. So maybe I'm asking for the impossible, you know, thinking that why the hell did they stay together this long if it was this bad? You were just, maybe there was this ideology, I don't know, that you were just supposed to stick it out no matter what. And then you just, well, it was where you were at anyway, it was the thing you were in with this person, and you were just kind of trying to make it work within the set little box of parameters that you had as a man or as a woman, either way. And it was only because, well, my husband's got the same story. Basically, his parents were in the same kind of a situation where his mum at some point also decided that it wasn't working anymore. And they had 2 kids, and my husband and his brother. And the kids were, I think, 12 and 15 or thereabouts when the whole divorcing process started. So that's around the same period that my parents got into it on their end. So in the early 70s, 72 to 75 was basically the period that this all manifested for both those families. So in my mum's family, I know that one of my mum's big problems was that she had this huge travail with her own dad. And I know that from just tiny little snippets and things I've picked up here and there, and also in the family tree research that I did, that they had this huge, extra big, what do you call that? Preconception about divorce. Because my granddad grew up as one of 2 kids in the very early, period of the 20th century, with his sister, with a mum who was divorced from their dad. The dad left the family for somebody else with no money. So what I've picked up here and there is that it was a difficult situation financially anyway. It was already, a difficult situation when the First World War started. My granddad was 5-6 years old, 7 years old, something like that. And his sister was, I believe, 2 years older, was still also very much a kid. Those kids were thrown basically from one rather impossible situation into the next. And it just didn't get any easier, ever, really. So if I apply my own helplessness to them, this is all about, as far as it isn't about the energy work and the Shakti and the mushrooms and all that, my whole story on YouTube here is about making sure compassion works all the way. So I was thinking of titling this whole thing Completion by Proxy, which is one thing I've been trying to do. is because each time my dad talks to me, I get a whole lot. There's this intel, there's what he's actually telling me, and what he's trying to get to me, or trying to get me to think about, or whatever, which takes place over here. And there's a whole load of stuff underneath that comes from what he's implying or saying that happened. And that has a lot to do with my mum, of course, with his reactions to her, the way that felt. He's not really all that explicit about how it felt. So I'm having to do a bit of guesswork there. Some of it I don't want to even ask him about, because I don't want to... It's, live and let live very much from both sides, which is why this is actually kind of working. Live and let live. So I'm picking up all these kinds of things. And he's got this, when he tells me this is what happened, and then you get his interpretation of the things, and parallel to that, I get a whole lot of other interpretations and things that I know, things that I can kind of see that this was just a posture of hers, it was the way she was acting, and I've been around her acting like that for 28 solid years. And it was going downhill all the way. And there was no way you could help her. So, except by, being there, being this constant crutch for her, doing the shopping, doing the cooking, doing the massaging, and the talking, there wasn't that much room left for me to develop as a person at all. So, that was back then. It's a long time ago. And I think that I've managed to come out of this, but I'm having to reinterpret quite a bit and make sense using my inner strength that I've developed. I am able and I'm allowed, hopefully, to make so much more sense of the of the pain that we're in, and that's apparently my job. That's apparently that's what I have to do here. And charting one person after the other. Like I said, this divorce business, my granddad had this huge anger inside him about parents divorcing. It's been there, all through this century, really, basically. And funny thing is, I'm suddenly realizing both of them, my granddad and my mum, his daughter, died in 1995. Granddad died in, I think in July somewhere, early July, maybe late June. And my mum died in November. So there was a really strong connection between those two, which is also why he couldn't let her go. He couldn't let her divorce in her marriage. He couldn't let her end her marriage, which was also, she tried to make it work. She did her best to make it work. But there's another set of problems. It's a continual pile of sets of problems. Whenever I'm trying so hard to make sense of this, and I'm trying to chart it all out, I can see how he reacted. I've learned quite a bit about how he reacted to her. Only it meant that she was going to feel even more left out. And maybe that's another factor in this whole compassion circus that we're in together, all of us, basically, is that there's the things that you're in, and then there is how you react to them, and how you respond, especially in the long term. And that's where things got really bad, because I think that in order for us to react, to respond, to deal, really, we need a couple of things, don't we? We need to have this actual strength. We need to have the actual energy basically has to be there. If the energy is completely depleted, that's not going to work. Then you really have to protect yourself. And I think that's what my mum tried to do. She basically tried always to protect herself, even from me. And even when I was like, yay, hi, But she didn't do that because she didn't love me or didn't care about me. It's that the expression of those things, it's like a country. I'm always comparing people to political situations, basically. And if there's no energy, it's like there's no food in the country or not enough. It's a warlike situation. It's like the concentration camp that she was in as a kid. There's a state of, what's that called? Being deprived. There's no abundance. So it's easy to judge somebody based on what you get reaction-wise, because you're on the receiving end of their reactions, of their responses. And basically, us as kids, we don't know anything. And they used to be the kids in that situation with their parents and with their families and their relatives and all that. And them before that. So what I'm trying to make sense of all of it and basically see everything also in a chronological sequence a bit, I suppose. And trying to do what the only thing I can do basically is listen and let it come to me, whatever it is. And that means in order for me to hear everything, I have to make sure that I am strong enough. And everything's helping, the Shakti and the assemblage point and the white light work that I've been doing recently, because there's that also. I haven't talked about white light for a bit, have I? I've done a few white light sessions recently, like once every 2 weeks or so, probably, where each time this is another level of perception again. I'm reminded suddenly that my dad yesterday, he tried to get me. It's very annoying when somebody's trying to get you to understand something that you already understand. Hello. I know this. I've known this for all my life, basically. So yeah, he's assuming things. Okay, it's okay. Because all this is really very interesting to me, and there's a significant, things are moving that didn't used to move. So it's invaluable. This is really priceless, all this input and all this exchange. He was trying to get me to see that there can be two truths that are, even if they're diametrically opposed, they can still both be true, which is like a quantum physics type of an approach, And I would tend to say nowadays that basically I don't think you can ever really say anything is true. Can you? You can say that for me this is true. Yes, sure. Go ahead. Why not? I mean, that's quite a practical approach in everyday life. At some point, you have to decide, is this true? I don't do that really all that much because I try to expand my awareness to include all these vibrations. So that's my mum's vibration, my granddad's vibration, my dad's. I'm trying to just basically be this big hotel where everybody can park themselves for a while. Including the mushrooms, It's, to me, it's more like the truth, if there was such a thing, or reality, which is yet something else, maybe. It's all words, right? how are we ever going to be able to, with this, makeup, be capable of determining, let alone describing, our reality? I feel that whatever you do in that respect is always an approach. And there's connections. I am connecting to my mushrooms. I'm connecting, hopefully, to some extent, to some of you guys, which is why you're here. I can choose, okay, to connect to this, that, and the other. There's areas where I cannot really choose yet, but it's what I like best, to be able to choose. And then whatever is there, it doesn't mean that when I'm not consciously connecting to at the point because of a choice that I made, that I'm not connected there as well. See, I'm connected to everything in every possible way. And then, example, there's loads of paranormal stuff that bases in connection that we don't really know enough about. There's ways of healing, and especially with white light, you can basically, do things to people, basically to, clear their energy spaces or whatever, which is something I don't do because I think it's their, you do you, okay? I'm not going to, I tend to do a generalized white light spreading out sometimes because that feels really good. But I tend to not interfere with people's energies, but I can feel them. I can feel my neighbors' energies, both of their sets. They're not home over there at the moment, I can tell. And the house is empty. But that's just there's quite a field between us. And my choice is not to interfere with him. There's all that, So where's the truth in that? All my energy work is unreal to my dad. It's not like it's untrue. He's trying to get me to understand that it's unreal to him. I can see that. And because I think from myself, from my own perspective, energy work is just the best thing that's ever happened to me, then of course I would love him to find that type of an interaction or awareness inside. But it's his choice. Basically, it's always, and it always will be, his own choice. And I don't know, I may assume that because he's 85 years old, it won't be that easy. If that's something that you've never done, how are you going to get to that all of a sudden? Which brings me back straight away to the peyote and the ayahuasca and all that, It's like people have apparently found a need during the 20th century, and still have, because there's loads of people out there who are, using party drugs and pills and ecstasy and all that, where their everyday consciousness is like this, and what they want in their weekends off and, in their parties is to be, kind of exploded beyond any sense of control into the psychedelic world. It sounds like a nightmare to me because anything can happen, and anything does happen. It's quite, it's not safe. They take the wrong kind of pills or the wrong combination of pills, or what was it I read somebody else talk about a while ago? It was like a combination of pills and dope and alcohol, and they're, Stevie Nicks described that at some point in in one of her fairly recent interviews, where she described how that worked, how the process, how you got really basically addicted to three things, more or less, because you needed the other thing to counteract the negative effects of the other things. So you were caught in this like that, you know, between all the effects of the things. Ugh. None of that for me, thank you. But for me, it's been much more gradual, and that's why I love, you know, shamanism and training. And I've been lucky. I suppose I'm still very lucky. So, yeah. So, and if you're not into that type of, if that hasn't been your path, there's still a fascination. All of us who are into you know, witchcraft and paganism and all that, we all have inklings of perceptions that are different, and there's always this extra, you know, there's always something. And for some of us it will just be interacting with cards or with runes, or doing a bit of ritual here and there, or doing a ritual for somebody else, and then finding that there's actually something that comes out of that, and working with intention and blah blah and all those things. It's fine. And nature, you know, interacting with nature. I'm really enjoying the fact that all the leaves are coming off the trees at the moment, and in this area of the world. And my garden's a complete mess. It's I've you know, swept up the leaves a couple of times already, and there's more coming. And it's that time of the year where everything just basically grumbles, crumbles with a C, not with a G. It's quiet. It's fairly cold. It's what was it just now? Still 1.5. Yeah, 1.5 degrees centigrade outside, over zero. So that's nippy, right? And it's a time you spend too much time inside, basically. So the brain tends to asphyxiate itself. That's what happens for me, anyway. Any conclusions? No, I don't have any conclusions about this, other than for me, I am basically my own single conclusion in this whole travail with people in general, not just my dad, but I'm basically being taught by the interaction with him to man up, you know, about things, and integrate all sorts of basically parts of myself also that I've carried around with me in my subconscious, you know, memories and programming that I got from my parents, from my mum, from my dad, from all of them, that has always been there, that has tried to, the programming has tried to control my life. And I'm trying to undo that with compassion and completion. And it's painful. It's quite, it's like I get this lens in here somewhere. I can see how angry my mother was all the time. That's what made her sick. It's what made her so sick. She's been sick all my life. So I never had a normal conversation with her either, ever. It was very lonely growing up that way. And I am wondering whether those two wonderfully interesting people, what they would have been like without the anger or the sadness. I have no idea. Questions like that. So I'm 3/4 of an hour in. Oh my God. I'm going to leave you at that because, you know, otherwise we'll be here all day. Thank you so much for tagging along on the journey, as always, you guys. And I'm using the words, aren't I? Yes. So that feels really good. Even though it's a bit messy and rambly, as always, I am doing the thing here. So loads of good things to you, and bless, and we will see what happens next. Okay? Thank you for watching, you guys. See you soon. Bye-bye. Ciao.